Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning, Tony. Right on cue.
Almost.
You have me well trained, son.
I can, yeah.
Let's do that. Just let them know what Cassandra we have over here. Just start us going on this one. Not that we're going to do it every time.
Okay. Hey, I don't know how much of that you all overheard out there, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to begin with a couple of introductions. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, and cover some basic housekeeping notes before we really get started. As the presentations get going, I would ask that everybody in all the different locations, whether you're on WebEx or at one of the telepresence sites, keep your mics muted unless you're talking, because it does get a little bit confusing. If you do have a question, you can unmute the mic, ask the question, or type it in the chat box if you're on WebEx, and one of us will be able to relay that question to whoever it's directed at. Want to start with, we're not going to, in the interest of time, we're not going to go around and introduce every single person that's out there, but I do want to welcome the folks that's joining us from the Cisco facilities in Boxborough, Pittsburgh, and down in Herndon, Virginia. We're here in Manhattan at One Penn Plaza. My boss, Jim Wartsky, is here, the Executive Director of Community Engagement Directorate. We have our Vision Director for Vision 2. You want me to do the introductions? Ask everybody.
No, that's fine. You're doing a great job, Tony.
Two of our great medical center directors from here in Manhattan, as well as in the Bronx. And I'm sorry,
Mary Carstensen, I'm an executive.
Now I know who you are. I've heard your voice so many times.
I know, that's right.
We have Mary and Deirdre from the NVI. And, you know, we have a lot of great current leaders. We got a young future leader here with us. West Point cadet Jonathan is with us here, as well as the director and associate director, is that, get that right, from Long Island National Cemetery. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to offer his welcoming comments, and then we're going to roll into the first presentation.
Good morning, everybody, and I certainly appreciate everyone's time in getting this networking event working. I understand we have facilities who are participating visually from like Maine down to Virginia, and there's others who are joining in on this northeastern attempt at networking with everyone talking. I am very pleased to always have my friends from the VA with me, my colleagues from the VA with me, and others who are from 501c3s and all the organizations who are part of our CVEBs who are here joining us today. I did also want to introduce, as Tony did, Jonathan Linscomb from Dallas, Texas, but a rising junior at West Point. And we have an emphasis on a 2-week opportunity to work with the Behavioral Science and Leadership Department at West Point. But more important to me is to realize that we are letting the incoming officers, and in Jonathan, about 2 years or less than 2 years from now, will be a commissioned officer for the Army. But his goal is going to go back to West Point and talk about his experience in these 2 weeks about learning about the VA. Because as I've told Jonathan, a couple things that I want him to pick up. Number one, after he's commissioned, after his tour of duty from West Point as a commissioned officer, it will be 5 years or maybe 20 or 30 years, or whatever your selfless service to our country is going to be as you go back and talk to your peers at the academy, that we start instilling in a young age that they will start realizing that there's life after the academy, life after the Army, and you will be a veteran. And while you are at the commissioned position in the Army, you will have the opportunity to be influencing soldiers and having the opportunity to talk to them as they're leaving the service so they know about the VA benefits. So we're starting at a young age as we are instilling these values of the VA and where life will be going for all who serve our country well. And I know we're starting with a prototype with West Point, but Annapolis is a consideration, the Air Force Academy is a consideration, all ROTC Commission, OCS Commission. Our goal is to get the word out about VA services. So welcome for joining us, John, and hopefully we'll spend a couple more days before we get you back up to West Point for your summer duty up there, and we'll talk more about how we'll be talking. Jonathan's goal will be to go back to West Point at the Leaders Conference and also discuss with all the chapter alumni throughout the United States about getting involved in the community, which brings me to my next point. The community, the CVEBs. We much appreciate all the grassroots efforts that you all are doing. It is voluntary, and there is no one who appreciates the voluntary work that everyone is doing to take care of our veterans more than me. And on behalf of Dr. Davis, the Chief Veterans Experience Officer, and myself and the entire CE team, community engagement team from VE, we appreciate your participation, appreciate all the work that you're doing. So with that, let's go on to our first slide.
And could I get a quick alibi, Jim?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay,
I was
Tony.
rushing through that really quick. Hey, we left the agenda up for a very specific reason, not only so that you all can see, these are the topics we're going to talk about today, but we did add a link there for the post-event survey. I want everybody to know that that's there. You're going to see this again when we take a break, and then we're going to put this slide up again at the end of the day as we close things up. I'm also going to be sending this out to all the participants, everybody that took part in this, so you will have a chance to give your feedback on this event. That's why we kept that up. Thank you.
And as we're going to be going through, I hope this is more of an informal route for us having our discussions, and certainly us at the table here in New York City will be chiming in when appropriate. As I know, the goal that I have is a lot of learning and interactions and all. My attempt is not to spend too much time on the VEO, the Veterans Experience Office overview, but I'm going to highlight a couple of the points on the slides that I have. But the goal really is to run through these slides. They are available for everyone, correct, Tony?
We're going to hang everything on our website.
So everything is going to be available, so you can reference these slides again, but I want to do the introductions for those who don't remember who the VEO team is. I know I have a short amount of time to go through all these slides, so I'm going to rush through them a little bit. The slides are available for anyone who wants to look at them later, and it'll be a very good opportunity for us to have some dialogue and discussions during our course of this morning as we go along. So with that, let me just put up very quickly the Veterans Experience Office and collecting, analyzing, and you all could read this slide, and informing VA policy and operations for accountability, service recovery, and program improvement. That's what we're about. And the way I like to look at the VEO office from my perspective of community engagement is I really enjoy working with the community, the 501c3s. My goal as a community engagement person is to have everyone around this table and all of us work together as a nucleus within a community to service our veterans. And that's going to come out a little bit more as I go through these slides. Next slide, please. Our VEO organization is led by Dr. Linda Davis, and you can see her picture on the top. Dr. Davis is a very, very well known person within the VE and within the government area, and she is a true asset to us. Her position, as you can see, is located to the right of the Secretary and has direct line into the Secretary. Our deputy is Barbara Morton, and our Chief of Staff is Lee Becker. All three of them are located in the Washington area. However, as you know, the CE team is throughout the United States. They all reported to me, and I report into Barbara, Lee, and Linda. And it's a great opportunity to have direct line into the Secretary's office about any of the concerns that we have, and it also assists us in the communities because there are some discussions with issues coming up in the community. We could also assist in trying to get them resolved in a prompt manner. Next slide, please. I'm going to tell you about the leadership of VE, and these are all your executive directors. You can see myself up. I am the Community Engagement Executive Director. Joy White, who once was my deputy, who's moved on to being a SES now, is in charge of program management, portfolio management within our organization, located out in the California area right now. Curtis Carey has insight and analytics, where he has a dynamic team who takes the data and looks at the data that we are receiving to best assist VE and to absorb it from the communities to find out how we can assist the medical centers and all the agencies within the VA. Mike Lucius will be responsible for working with benefits, the benefits portfolio, as well as national cemeteries. Jennifer Purdy is working from the medical center side, BHA, and I'm assuming that our business directors know her very well. And Denise Kitts is our multi-channel individual working on some of our programs, such as the telephone hotlines and all the other great work that she's doing with technology, and she's been a true asset to us. So that is your leadership team within the VE as far as the different executive directors that we have working on our VE, within our VE office. Next slide, please. What I wanted to do is just very quickly, and you know, I'm looking at how much time I'm taking right now, but you can see that our goal in the Veterans Experience Oversight is through data, tools, technology, and engagement. You could read about all of them on the slides that we're giving, but you can see how the VE office circles around our true goal of the veteran in the center. And I could talk specifically about the engagement part, because that's probably the most important one for these CVEBs right now that we're working with. And that is the CVEB work, the MOUs that we have, such as with Mary Carson's group and the Federal Advisory Committees, which one is ongoing right now out in California with the LA one, and that is where Dr. Davis is physically located today, is out in LA, working on the Federal Advisory Committee. We also have, and that one's the chairman of that committee is General Hopper. We also have another committee that we're working with Elizabeth Hill as far as family care, and Senator Dole is heading that one up, and she's based out of Washington, D.C. All those committees are voluntary committees coming on to support the veteran, to support the Secretary of the VA. Next slide, please. Just want to highlight some of the work that we're doing, and my big point I'm going to say, and we could look at how we go through our VE office being part of the modernization, being part of the Secretary's priorities, and the big point I want to bring out on this one is also looking at pre-9/11 veterans as well as post-9/11 veterans. We're encompassing and acknowledging all of our veterans across, and you can see it looks a little complex, but true value is that we are looking at veterans, the family, caregivers, and survivors, both from pre-9/11 and post-9/11. So we are inclusive of all. Next slide, please. I'm just going to quickly highlight some of the work, and I know my colleagues to my left from the VHA side, the medical center side, can see some of the work that Jennifer's team is working on. The stats are up there, but you know, the standard phone greeting that we're working on, so it's a standardization, and I always look at corporate America, who has standard phone greetings, but so can we across the Red Coat Ambassadors, which is a huge success, so that when people come into medical facilities, they're identified by wearing a red coat, and some of them are voluntary to support. It's a great program that if someone's lost or looking for someone to go, fellow veterans are supporting the organizations to the individuals to make route and navigate through the facilities. And it's just an attempt at us having better customer service and better work with the veterans visiting. Own the Moment is a class that's being taught throughout VHA by Jennifer's group, and it's a customer service base and owning the moment at a time of interaction with the veterans, and it's all been very successful, and we're seeing great results coming from it, as the stats are proving. And there's also the issue of wearing a badge that says, why are you choosing VA, why are you serving? You know, many people are saying, well, I'm a veteran, I'm a spouse of a veteran, I honor veterans, and those are just ways of us expressing to ourselves why you are serving your veterans. And as Martina's showing hers, that she has her badge up there showing that she is a veteran. I actually have one tucked away in my shirt right now, but it says that I'm an Army veteran on it as well. Thank you. Next slide. I'm telling you the great work that VHA is doing. We're all very proud of it and successfully going. Welcome kits. We're finding out that we are putting together a welcome kit for veterans coming in that is inclusive of all agencies. The website is listed below, and hopefully we'll be having partners in the field throughout the United States that when a veteran comes to your community and they're looking for a welcome kit, that they could just have a printed welcome kit given to them, but there's also a website that helps you navigate through the ways of the VA. So when there is post-time, or when you are leaving active duty, or your reserve commitment, National Guard commitment, or your end of tour, that you have an option to learn more about the VA through a welcome kit coming in. Next slide, please. I'm getting the feeling that I have to rush a little bit faster through these slides because of the time that I really want to dedicate for everyone talking, and I'm sensitive to everyone's time. We talked about Denise Kitz's work, and once again, this is just a tip of an iceberg of all the work that VE has been doing. The induction of VE started in 2015. We actually launched ourselves shortly thereafter, about 9 months after that. In October of last year, we reorganized ourselves and put ourselves into this format. And these are all successes that we have had since recent time. And it's the tip of an iceberg, and I look forward to everything else going on. And this is a perfect example of multi-channel technology with Denise Kitz's group, where we're answering a White House requirement to have a VA hotline. And since October 15th to basically March 10th, these are the stats that we have pulled up on them and how many veterans we are serving using the VA hotline to the White House. Next slide, please. Community engagement, this is the slide where I could start talking a little bit about my organization involved with everyone who's on this call, basically the CVEBs who are out there. And first of all, let me also congratulate the number of CVEBs that we have participating in our program, and today it's up at 141 throughout the country, which is a fantastic number. People are seeing the value behind the community veteran engagement boards and are creating more. I anticipate probably about 5 more boards to establish themselves in some form by the end of this fiscal year. And I want you to also know that the field team that we have that's with VE Community Engagement is out there to support you in whatever way we could help you establish, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But you can read the words that are up for challenge, approach, and anticipated outcomes, but what I like to look at is that diagram, and it gives you an idea of veteran being in the center. We have the family members and all, so it's not just looking at a veteran, but we are encompassing everything involved with the veteran, his immediate family, his caregiver, the survivors. It's all in that center area. The outer loop has all those agencies to include VA agencies. And we all like to come, as I put it, come to the table, just as we are right here in New York City, and discuss what we can do to support veterans in the community and start working together as one entity. And that far circle that's out in the air, well, that's us, that's the VE team. And that's our attempts to try to support the CVEB, support the community, and support VA, as well as all the 501c3 state agencies, the county commissions, all to come together. Because as you look at that slide, and we're all focusing on servicing that individual in the middle, our goal is to become a combat multiplier, in the terms I used to use when I was on active duty, or a force multiplier, so we could all support that veteran, navigate through his needs, whether it be a job, be it finding a home or whatever, but it's mentorship happening in the communities, it's VA coming up to the community saying, how can we help better? Because we also face one fact, the VA can't do it alone, and we certainly need the eyes and concerns of the communities to identify issues with veterans, and we'd like to hear about them and also navigate how, or try to facilitate how we can support them. Next slide, please. This slide is a very simple slide, and the graphics tells it all. The graphic that's to the left just depicts a veteran family who's coming into a community somewhat concerned, somewhat disoriented, somewhat wondering, where do I really go? Well, what does the perfect CVEB look like? To try to put it in a simple diagram form, that CVEB's in the middle, like Community Veteran Engagement Board's in the middle, and we thank so much for those volunteer chairmen who come forward and organize and stay in a responsible role for 1, 2, 3 years or whatever. But at that point, we can have the veteran, spouse, family, whatever, come to the CVEB to try to get guidance and maybe streamline a little bit of information. Take out some of the guesswork, take out some of the issues of not knowing where to really go. And it starts off with going to the CVEB and saying, hey, well, you need a house? Well, we have a couple of real estate agents who might be able to assist you, a place to live, or just answer questions to lower that anxiety that you might have as you're coming. And there are so many 501c3s, there are so many partnerships in the corporate world that want to help. Well, let's see how we can help. And it's working out beautifully. Like I said, 141 right now, and I anticipate about 5 more by the end of this fiscal year. And then we'll just keep on going past that to see how many we can do as we continue working. Next slide, please. Vet-friendly community framework. You can read the verbiage behind it. The inclusive, accessible, community-driven, flexible, integrated. You all who are working on these CVEBs now all know this, because you're actually living it by every day. But I want to just highlight this part in the slide so that we can tell that these are the factors that we base ourselves off of. We have our New York City CVEB joining us right now, so good morning and thank you for being here with us. We certainly appreciate you coming in, Dan.
Thank you.
And it's great work to see how we come together and work out. And there's our flexible work that we realize every single community is a little different. Everyone has different needs. All 141 of them right now are slightly different, but I want to also reemphasize that we as the VA are there to support you in whatever way we can, whether it's from the medical side, the NCI side, or the VA side. Next slide. And this gives a quick depiction of how the CVEBs are covering the United States now, and you can see there's a lot of room for our growth. There's a lot of opportunities that we will be populating in the future. So when I said I have 5 more by the end of this fiscal year, even past that 5 more, there's an open avenue for many more. So as I reach out to the CVEBs that are participating in the Northeast area right now, if you know of more areas that are looking, or you feel that there's an opportunity to grow even more, we can. I'm going to use a perfect example is with the New York City one that I'm here presently with right now. And as we realized that Long Island had a demand for it and a little bit of a challenge to get from Long Island to New York City, there was a new CVEB that opened up in Long Island because we knew the requirements that were needed in that area. And it all seems to be working very well. The goal is to serve our veterans, to partner with the communities so that we can serve our veterans and answer their questions and be very responsive to their needs from the VA's perspective. Next slide, please. And if there are any questions, I'd like to just put this up there. You have my contact information. It's written up there. My deputy is not listed there right now, but he is Chris Olson, who's doing a fantastic job. I find most of my time being spent here in New York, or some of it actually in Florida. Chris is over in Arizona, and we have Andy Martinez, who's also down in Florida right now, and she's my program manager. If you have any questions about CVEBs, any support that you need, please contact us so that we can answer you. We are very prompt in answering your requests or any issues that might come up or any concerns that might come up that we can assist the community, and please contact us by all means. Next slide. And I think I should be just about on schedule now, but the only last minute I want to say is thank you very much for the community work that the CVEBs are doing. Quite frankly, I said it earlier, the VA can't do it alone. We cannot do it without the assistance. VHA, VBA, NCA, we can't do it alone without the assistance that we have from the community. So you are truly a valuable partner to us. We recognize that partnership, and we need that partnership. So thank you very much. And I look forward to the rest of today, as there might be some networking opportunities and discussions that we can have in talking with best practices or information that the VA will be putting out, or whatever it is, and hopefully we'll get into some type of rhythm where these will become more common practices for us to do. But once again, thank you very much for your partnership. And Tony, it's back to you. I think I'm on schedule, right?
You're good, Jim. Thanks.
Today, we're really pleased to join you. My name is Kayla Williams, and I'm joined by my colleagues Sarah and Shaka. I will let them introduce themselves. Next slide. I'm the director of the Center for Women Veterans. We are also organizationally, like VE, aligned in central office in the office of the secretary. Next slide. My office, the Center for Women Veterans, was actually created by law in the mid-90s. We have a number of mandated functions that include advising both internally and externally on policies, programs, and laws related to women veterans, disseminating information, and supporting our federal advisory committee, just as you heard about how the Veterans Experience Office also supports a couple of FACAs. Our mission is to monitor and coordinate VA's administration of healthcare, benefits, and programs for women veterans, serve as an advocate for cultural transformation to recognize the service and contributions of military and veteran women, and raise awareness of the responsibility to treat women veterans with dignity and respect. Next slide. So you may or may not know that women were actually limited by law for a number of years to just 2% of the force. Since that restriction was lifted, we've gradually grown to be about 15% of the total force today. Next slide. As our representation in the force has risen, so has our representation in the veteran community. We're just under 10% today, roughly 2 million veterans, and our population should increase to match that in the active duty force by about 2035. It's important to note that we skew both younger and more ethnically diverse than male veterans. We are one of the fastest growing subpopulations of the veteran community. Next slide. So I've had people ask me, why do we need an office to focus on women veterans? Shouldn't we be just regular veterans? We're all veterans. Why do we need to consider women veterans differently? And on the slide, we have a couple of examples of why my office still exists. We know that in the civilian community, and unfortunately even within VA facilities, women are often not recognized as veterans. They may have been, those who served in earlier eras, been explicitly or implicitly told that they weren't real veterans, especially those who didn't serve in combat. And when they try to own their veteran identity, they may meet resistance. These are examples of folks who have parked in veteran parking spaces at a local grocery store and come back to their cars to find nasty notes accusing them of stealing a parking space from a veteran. So we know that folks don't always realize that women are veterans, and that unfortunately has extended even to some VA employees. Next slide. That may be one reason that we see a gap in the levels of trust that women veterans feel in VA compared to male veterans. The VE office does a survey of hundreds of thousands of veterans annually to assess trust, ease, effectiveness, and emotion. And the key measure that VE is monitoring trust is assessed using veteran responses on a Likert scale of agreement with the statement, "I trust VA to fulfill our country's commitment to veterans." Way back in 2016, only 55% of veterans chose agree or strongly agree. At the end of the first quarter of this year, that has risen to almost 70%. But you can see on this slide that's 70% for men and only 60% for women. Now note that because we are such a minority, that 10-point gap only drives the overall average down by 1 point to 69%. Next slide. Here are some trends so you can see the overall upward trajectory. Note that we did see a slight decline among women for the most recent 2 quarters, though I'm not sure if that's statistically significant. And while this does indicate some cause for concern, I want to show you one complicating factor to bear in mind when we think about this trust gap, and that's age. Next slide. So you can see on this side, when you look at the differences in trust between men and women by age group, it's actually much smaller. And the gap between the trust for the youngest veterans, it actually reverses. So women in the youngest age group have slightly higher levels of trust. You can also see here that the gap between the youngest and oldest men is 26 points. So that is much bigger than the gap between genders in any of those individual age brackets. And since women do skew 15 years younger than men in VA overall, it's a little unclear how much of the gender gap is mediated by those age differences. And I want to be really clear here that I'm not saying gender is not a concern. VE has done some sentiment analysis. We know there are differences in the types of issues that men and women raise, but we know that there are areas where the agency needs to continue improving. I want us also just be aware that the gap in trust between older and younger veterans is a real area of concern. And that's something that we should all be conscious of as an institution, and folks who serve veterans, we do have a real issue here to monitor and stay attuned to. So when the VA has carefully analyzed their customer service data, it didn't show disparities, but VHA research has consistently identified areas of lower satisfaction for women. So because of the survey data that we've seen, because of anecdotal input that we've gotten from women veterans, we were really, really excited to support the Veterans Experience Office when they did some research to do a deep dive into those concerns among women veteran VHA patients. So I'm going to turn it over to them now to go into the research that they did and what they've learned from it.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Shaka Khan Lee. I actually work for the Office of Veterans Experience, Benefits Experience Doctrine, and I'm the project lead for the Women Veterans program for VE, as well as for the, I do also work on the Welcome Kit as well. So over a year and a half ago, VE, in partnership with the Center of Women Veterans and VHA, or Veteran Health Administration, Women Health Services, partnered to understand why these trust scores were so low. And so what we found, and because go to the next slide, was women veterans, again, their trust scores are way lower than men. So we talked to over 100 women by interviewing, conducting, and facilitating human-centered design workshops, and Sarah's going to tell you a little bit later what human-centered design is. We at VE, what makes us a little bit different from all the other administrations in VA when it comes down to customer service or customer experience, we actually focus on our customer, and we build tools and build resources according to what the customer wants and needs. So we actually talk and interview with our customers to understand their needs. So the women that we spoke to, again, was over 100 women via interviews, and we conducted 2 human-centered design workshops in North Carolina. One was in Fayetteville and the other in Durham, North Carolina. And the women that we spoke to had an average age of about 50, 51. 15% of the women, they saw a provider in the primary care clinic. The other 85% saw a provider in the women's clinic. 38% served in combat, and the average years of service was a little bit over 10 years. We spoke to every racial background, African American, Asian American, Caucasian, Pacific Islanders. We also spoke to women who have served in North Carolina, Alabama, Ohio, Texas. So we served a little bit, and I say we because I myself am a woman veteran. We served a little bit out in almost every geological location. And what impressed me the most is that we had a representation of from every MOS, or every occupation, pretty much in the military. And we had enlisted and officers represented in that research. And so when we spoke to women veterans, we often found that they had a similar mindset, and they wanted to be taken care of from the very start, meaning that before they make that first phone call to VA, they wanted to have some trust there. And for us women veterans, that trust was often broke before we even called the VA, mostly due to military sexual trauma and just, going to the VA or having those experiences with VA. And then not have that respect there as a woman veteran. So I want to, we did a video also to capture some of the data, but because we can't show it in this format, I'm going to read some of the quotes that we heard from our women veterans. My provider changes, and I don't have advance warning. I find out when I arrive. Respect me. Send me a letter saying that my provider has changed. Don't tell me as I'm waiting in the waiting room for my doctor. Be respectful. Drop a note before I get there. Second quote, I want you to treat me as a whole person, not just someone assigned to you. I want you to care about me and not just the numbers. Third quote, there's no consideration for women veterans' privacy. Some medical appointments are sensitive in nature, and my business is being blurted out loud. So those are some of the things that we've heard from our women veterans. Next slide. So from the research and all the data that we gathered, there were 5 themes that rose, and you can read them on the screen. I don't like reading the slides. I'm going to have to read these today. Theme 1 was women need empathy, respect, responsiveness to customer service at every step of the primary care visit. Again, before they make that phone call, they want to have, that respect and that responsiveness to their needs. Theme 2, women need to have a connection with their provider, their healthcare team, and other women veterans. We heard that, women veterans, again, once they got there, they had to retell their story. I'm sure men have the same concern, that every time they go to a visit or any type of appointment, they had to retell their story every time, and not knowing the time frame was given, if the appointment was 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And, most of that time was given retelling their stories and concerns. Theme 3, women perceive inequities in their care. This theme pretty much is based on when a woman veteran goes to different clinics in the VA, whether that be in North Carolina or in, let's say, in Iowa, they receive different levels of care. So they may get dental services in North Carolina, but when they arrive in Iowa, and they're not receiving the same care. Or as an employee, what we found is women veterans will call from their personal phones and not get an answer, but yet call from their VA line and get an appointment immediately. So those type of inequities was what we heard. Theme 4, women have specific healthcare needs that sometimes are not addressed in the current VA structure. We all know that the VA was not built with women in mind because, we were not, quote unquote, serving in the military at that time. So the structure in VA still has come a long way, but still has a long way to go. Some clinics don't have a specific women's clinic designated for women. There's still shared space with men, and women just don't feel comfortable in those environments. Particularly, we have a lot of facilities that have issues and concerns with the catcalling the often the disrespect from some of the men, not only from veterans but from staff as well. Theme 5, women veterans want to be involved in the design of patient and care experiences improvements, meaning that we want to be part of the solution. We're not here to just complain. We want you to design solutions with us in mind and let us be a part of that and let us co-create those resolutions or solutions with VA. Next slide. So this is our journey map, and I'm going to let Sarah explain how we established or got to this map.
So, again, I'm Sarah Hughes. I'm with the Innovation Lab, and I'm on long-term assignment with Veterans Experience Office and working closely with Shaka on women's veterans experience with primary care. So Shaka just shared some of the very broad themes that we heard from women veterans about their healthcare in particular, or their healthcare experience. This map zooms in and offers a close-up look at the primary care visit and how women veterans move through the primary care visit. So as you can see with this map, there's a very clear beginning and an end to the experience. The beginning being the scheduling and whatever needs to be done to set up that appointment, moving to arriving on site to the facility, moving to wayfinding, getting your way to the place of your visit, to meeting with your provider, to scheduling specialty care. And the reason these types of maps are helpful is that health is a very broad term that can be interpreted differently by different people. So to have a very succinct and focused conversation around women's primary care visit, we use this as a tool so that we're all talking the same language and we're all talking about the same point in time. One other thing to mention about this map is it's not a map that was just created overnight based on a couple of anecdotal interviews. This map is actually based on the qualitative data in-person interviews that were conducted over a number of years. We pulled and built from the in-person interviews that were done on veterans' whole health experience, and we teased out the women veterans' experience of primary care. And then we supplemented those interviews with in-person workshops with women veterans in Durham and Fayetteville, as Shaka shared. So this represents the experiences of at least over 100 women veterans. Really quickly, I just want to bring your attention to the key in the corner of the map. What it does is it identifies, there's a it might be a little bit difficult to see, but there's a black circle, and that black circle stands for a moment that matters to women veterans. So we found that all along the course of the visit, there were 3 moments that stood out beyond all others that were either challenging or stressful for many women veterans. Scheduling was one moment that matters. The visit, the sit down with the provider, is another moment that matters. And then the handoff from VA to specialty care was the other moment that matters. So this is where we saw a lot of interest and conversation from women veterans around those 3 moments. So what that does is it draws our attention to these 3 moments as areas to do more work and to do more to improve upon. Very briefly, some of the, I'm going to hone in on the primary care visit, as Shaka already shared. There were a lot of women veterans who felt they had to retell their health history over and over again if they received a visit with a brand new provider. So I would say of those 3 moments, that was the one that stood out the most. Just briefly, a little bit about our approach to this effort. Again, we use human-centered design, which is a type of qualitative research effort. I'd say one of the main things that stands out about human-centered design is you are constantly going back to those who are closest to the issue at hand, not just once, but sometimes twice, 3 times, 4 times, so that you're always building in that feedback loop from the customer so that you never assume you have everything that you need in one wrap from talking to customers, or in this case, women, veterans, and patients. You're always going back to make sure that you understood what they said and that you're understanding the qualitative data that's coming into you. One note that really stood out to us, and it is also in the spirit of what Shaka said earlier about women veterans telling us that they want to be, they want a partner status. They want to be partners in health. They want to be seen as whole people, not just a collection of symptoms. They want to be seen as whole people, not just numbers, as Shaka mentioned earlier. And an example from a woman veteran who did feel that she was a partner in her own health with her VA provider is this quote: "I love my provider. She listens. She's attentive. She's not afraid to admit when she doesn't know and needs to consult. And I can say I found this," and she'll say, "Oh, that's interesting. Let me see." So she's being drawn in by her VA provider as a partner in health. And finally, Shaka will share a little bit about what comes next for this project.
Okay, so the next steps, we created or co-authored 9 design questions or design opportunities based on the 5 themes. You probably can't read them because they're so small, but we actually had a workout session with the Center of Women Veterans as well as Veteran Health Administration's Women Health Services, Dr. Patty Hayes and Dr. Sally Haskell, and they have actually now honed down on one design opportunity they're going to move forward with partner with VE, and hopefully we're actually in the process of getting that project approved, but we're going to focus on the provider and patient relationship and how to improve that experience for our women veterans. And so because you can't read this, some of these design opportunities, if you want to send an email to Tony, and I will actually send you a copy. We have a actual Building with Trust booklet that we created, but it is online, as well as the journey map and the design opportunities. And we will email you a copy, that way you can have an up-close look and reading of all the research efforts that were made. We're also partnering too with the National Women Veterans Program Committee to also help design some solutions or resolutions to help meet the needs of women veterans.
So we wanted to talk a little bit now about some of the things that we are doing at the national level to try to foster greater trust with women veterans. Next slide. Women's Health Services in VHA has long-standing cultural transformation efforts where they have campaigns that go out to try to raise awareness among VA staff and providers about women veterans as part of the population we serve, and about specific types of concerns that they may have, and accordingly to ensure that they're more likely, we are more likely as women veterans when we enter a VA facility to be recognized as veterans and treated with the same dignity and respect that our male counterparts have earned, instead of being asked, as unfortunately happens too often, who's your sponsor, or are you here with your spouse? Next slide. My office, the Center for Women Veterans, has also tried to sponsor some innovative new ways that we can drive that culture change. So, for example, last year we arranged to have storyboards of art by women veterans featured at, it's actually gone to about 40 VA medical centers throughout the course of the year. It launched in March, which is Women's History Month. And we did this art exhibit in partnership with the Veteran Artist Program, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting veteran artists, with support from First Data and Veteran Canteen Service, so at no cost to taxpayers. The goal of putting these displays up is to help women vets feel more welcome when they enter VA by seeing themselves and their experiences represented, while also raising awareness among VA employees and male patients about our service, sacrifice, resilience, and creativity. Next slide. This year, we replicated that with a project featuring 10 women veteran athletes. This one we did in partnership with the nonprofit Team RWB, with support again from the Veteran Canteen Service and also from NBC Universal and the Semper Fi Fund. Our photographer, Stacy Pearsall, is herself a woman veteran. veterans. It launched again during Women's History Month with concurrent displays at 10 VA medical centers nationwide. It's continuing to travel to other sites as well as being displayed at various VSO conventions and more. It has those same awareness-raising goals as the art exhibit, with the additional goal of encouraging women veterans to engage in physical fitness activities to stay healthy and active throughout their life cycle, regardless of what physical challenges they may exhibit. And I'm just going to show you two examples of some of the women veteran athletes that we featured. We worked very hard to showcase veterans of all ages, ability levels, and demographics to really accurately show the population that we serve. These women are incredibly inspiring to me on a personal level. Angela Madsen, who you see on the screen, has rowed solo across the Atlantic Ocean. So solo, I mean with no support boat. When I saw some of these women and what they're able to accomplish despite really significant limitations, at least what people would think of as limitations visually, it really has inspired me. I now go to the gym much more than I did before I started. I've lost weight. I'm much stronger and faster. So we're really excited about the success that this exhibit has had in inspiring folks across the country. Next slide. Another advocacy effort that we've tried out, this based in part on some of the input that we heard from the VE research. Some of the women veteran patients that they interviewed said, we don't see women veterans as leaders at VA. We don't know they're there. And we know that we have women veterans in leadership positions at VA. We know women vets are overrepresented in the federal workforce, and a significant percentage of VA employees are veterans. So we partnered to take a series of portraits of women veteran VA employees at central office and displayed them on monitors throughout the building and also featured them on our website. We've now started to take this concept, which I must give credit for, the I Am Not Invisible kind of brand came out of Oregon, a woman veteran coordinator in Oregon who launched it there. So we have photographers going around and partnering at VA medical centers, at multiple sites, as well as some nonprofit sites, to take portraits of women veterans and brand them with the I Am Not Invisible logo, and then we can feature them online, we can display them at the hospital, we can have portraits printed and put up. And when we're doing this with women veteran patients, it helps, again, employees and fellow patients see that women are veterans. And when we're featuring VA employees and leaders, you see Linda Davis, who heads VE up there as well, we can show the patients that we serve that we're not just faceless bureaucrats. We come from their community, and we care very passionately about serving them. Next slide. We are also on social media now. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, at VA Women Vets for both of those. Please also go to our website, va.gov/womenvet. You'll get a not at all annoying pop-up that'll ask if you want to sign up for email updates in a number of different arenas, and we'd be happy to share news, events, research, and resources with you that are relevant specifically to women veterans. Next slide. So I want to make sure that you in the CVEB community know that both of those exhibits that I talked about, the art exhibit and the athlete exhibit, are available to you. So if you've seen this discussion, this presentation, and you're thinking to yourself, are the women vets in our community feeling underrepresented? Do they have concerns that we should be more attuned to? And it's inspired you to perhaps want to host a town hall specifically for women veterans. We'd be happy to send you one or both exhibits that you can display while you're hosting a town hall or some sort of roundtable or conversation focusing on the women veterans in your community. If you think the I Am Not Invisible project is something you would like to replicate in your local community, reach out to us. We can provide you the template to make it easy to put together a series of beautiful black and white portraits that you can display locally. And if necessary, we may be able to also help you with finding a photographer, finding studio space, or finding other ways to replicate it locally. So I really want you to think of us as a resource for you in the field to find better ways to engage more closely with a segment of your population that may traditionally have felt underserved, unrecognized, and unvalued, because we care very passionately about ensuring that women veterans have the same high-quality experience that male veterans do when they come to VA, and that we are doing everything we can as a VA community to improve their veteran experience. And I don't know exactly what time it is, but hopefully we have...
You guys are set, we're maybe 30 seconds over, so you're good.
Okay, so we don't have time for questions, but if you email us, we'll definitely get back to you, and thanks again for hosting us today.
Hey, Kayla, Sarah, Shaka, thank you so much for that powerful briefing. Really appreciate it. And great job on time.
Yeah.
I didn't see any questions come in over the chat box,
There's one
so
here, I think
we're good.
You got one here.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a question in the room here. So please go ahead.
Actually, I'm Sherry Austin, the Director of Long Island National Cemetery and also an Army vet as well. I actually have a couple comments and a question as well. I wanted to thank Shaka for your service.
Yes.
From one fellow female veterans to another. And also, Kayla, I am interested in actually, if you can send us a template, or I can actually reach out to you through Tony to get your email address in the non-invisible for Long Island women's veterans. We actually had a visitor from the local community yesterday coming to talk to us specifically about the women veterans on Long Island National Cemetery, and I'd be more than happy to help her out as well with that. I wanted to make a comment, Shaka. I think you were talking about the clinic as far as the women's clinic and the things that's going on at the hospital there. I remember a couple of decades ago, when I first got out, went to the VA Medical Center, and at the time, the women's clinic was just maybe starting to be established. At the clinic that I was at, and this is back in 2001, there wasn't one yet. And I remember walking in, not knowing anything. I was a single mom, and there was a gentleman out there that was trying to help. And I must have sat there for about 45 minutes, all kinds of questions of why do you need help, what are you doing here, what's going on, and how do I know you're a veteran, and where is your DD-214? I mean, just all kinds of questions, and I had just, at the time, ETS, and had gotten a job offer with VBA, but I was just adjusting. I moved in from Germany with my child, went to Minnesota, had no idea where Minnesota was on the map, right? Got a job offer, I took it, went, and great city, love it, and I just remember breaking down. It's like, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you, and this is right in the middle. The gentleman was sitting there at the reception desk, and obviously there's tons of people in the back waiting room. And so I'm really glad to see that the women's clinic was established, and I have never gone to the VA Medical Center since then. So on my behalf, and I'm lucky enough to have a job and be able to use my private, insurance to do what I need to do to move on with my career and my life. But I am very, very happy to see that the VA Medical Center is more focused on revamping those clinics and getting actually female providers to assist in working in the women's clinic. So good for you guys. The other comment that I have here is the data collection that you talk about, that's human design. And what I've noticed, and I could be mistaken, and please correct me if I am wrong, that you were doing this data collection out of over 100 women within the North Carolina area, correct?
No. So actually, we focused on Baltimore, Maryland. We were in Texas, North Carolina, and D.C. So 4 different areas.
Okay. Have you thought maybe just at some point in time, maybe expanding out across the United States to maybe get a broader spectrum and a more of a collective,
Yes. So for phase 2, we're actually in the process of getting that project approved. We're going to focus on a broader area. So maybe a focus on maybe one from every segment of the United States. So yes, we are definitely entertaining those ideas. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to see because, every single region, I think, have their own specialized needs.
Yes.
So, but thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to share one of the things that I think CVEBs can be so important in supporting is finding women like you who went to VA years ago, had a bad experience, and haven't gone back.
Yes.
I know when I first went to VA in 2005, I didn't have a good experience. I didn't go back for years. I've now been using VA exclusively for my care for a few years and have gotten terrific care. And one of the things that I'm acutely aware of now as a veteran is that my civilian providers never asked me whether or not I experienced sexual harassment or assault during my time in the military because they didn't think to ask if I'd been in the military. They never asked me about burn pit exposure. They don't know anything about my military-specific exposures or concerns. And it's vital that we get women veterans into VA because we provide that culturally competent, evidence-based care. And this is acutely visible when it comes to suicide prevention, which I think is the next piece, but really worth noting that the growth in the rate of suicide among women veterans is among women vets not using VHA for care. Women vets who are coming to VHA for their care have not seen that growth in the suicide rate. So we need to make sure that we're finding women vets who either have never come in or who came in once and had a bad experience, and urge them to come in and give VA another shot because we've made tremendous improvements and we provide really excellent care with the highest rates of breast cancer and cervical cancer screenings of any system of care in the country. So we have to get that message about the high quality care we provide out to the veterans in our community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Kayla, I'm just going to add one more thing. I'm sorry, not to take running into your time here, Tony. I know you're on a time restriction.
It's very good.
But the other aspect I have heard too, and I have this on my note and I failed to mention it, is, you know, those that are service connected for the women veterans specifically, obviously for whether it's sexual trauma or any sign of traumatic experience that they've experienced in the military. Part of, and I know this is a requirement working for the Veterans Benefit Administration, is going back in to get their service connection and getting quote-unquote reevaluated. And from what I've gathered from the interaction that I've had with my comrades and other veterans as well, female-wise, you know, it's a pretty traumatic experience. Sending them there, and especially if you have a provider, and this is nothing against any provider, if you have a provider that are sitting there, and this may have something to do with the age thing also, who looks like she's 20 or 30, don't get me wrong, I look younger, way younger than my almost 50 age as well. But looking like she's 10, 15, I don't know, 20 years old, just graduated out of med school, and sitting there and have never been in the military, asking these questions that may or may not re-triggered whatever it is that they were going through. And I hear it a lot. I hear them coming out, and if they were on their way to somewhat getting on a track of being, you know, just on a straight path, now they end up going to the exam or this reevaluation, and they're right back down to where they're at, and it's like starting all over again. This is what I'm hearing, and I can actually see that happening as well. I mean, I had that one experience, and I'm lucky enough to have a private doctor that is concerned with my, you know, military experience and whatnot. But in the long run, you know, sending our women veterans out to these clinics or getting reevaluated, if they were on their way to somewhat doing better, re-triggering those to the point where they're right back to where they started. And it's hard because, you know, I think when they go back to get those reevaluations, they start from the basic, okay, if this happened to you back and whatever it happened, and start with this, this, and this. I mean, I don't know, depending on the experience that each veterans have gone through, or each female veteran has gone through, whether it will break them or not break them again. Do you know what I mean? So I just want to point that out. I don't know if there's any solution, and I wish that I could come up with a solution, but I get a lot of this just working out of VBA when I was there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.